Maybe start with your beaver story and what you were asked to do with beavers.
Well, my first job was working at something called the Environmental Research Institute, which is like Lincoln Labs, but Michigan, right? And they had just put up the very first satellite for monitoring the ecology of the Earth, right? That was a thing. And the reason they did that is there was a big crop failure in Russia. All the wheat went away. Russians didn't tell anybody. They cornered the market. It was a disaster. And so the Americans said, we're going to put up like multispectral cameras in the sky and pay attention to what's happening on the Earth. And that's why you know, for instance, about how rainforests are changing. That's why you know about climate change. But first we started with wheat. And one of the things I got to do is ask about beavers, because beavers are a signal species in the ecology. And so you got this thing like hundreds of miles up. It can see things about the size of a house. And you go, well, how are you going to do beavers? Well, it turns out beavers make ponds that are all the same size, and their water, which is like incredibly reflective. So you just count the little ponds, and that tells you how many beavers there are. And I sort of took that trick, and that's my whole life, basically. I measure things. No, seriously. You measure things you didn't think were going to be really directly interested in, but it turns out they're in lockstep with stuff you really care about. And that's what I do today.
So Sandy, I have a few photos of you that
Oh
I've
my God.
taken over the years. You know, you're such a sage, a wise person.
Now, you always
And-
call me Yoda.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that
You're
because
the
I'm not
Indiana
very
Jones
attractive
Yoda.
or
No.
what?
Yeah, you're
Okay, yeah.
over 25, over 50. You've influenced so many people. So the physics of people. You coined the term social physics. The idea that human behavior follows patterns as predictable as physical laws. When did you first see that idea clearly, and what has the experiment, or what was the moment that convinced you it was real, not just a metaphor, social physics?
Well, first of all, the actual term, which was originally in French,
Yeah.
right, was coined in the very early 1800s. That's why we have a census today. It was the idea that if you understood about the physics of society, you could then
the Tocqueville
govern
stuff,
better.
yeah.
And I revived it because we had a couple of interesting experiments. One is we built these little things as a science experiment, little badges that listened to people's tone of voice, didn't record the speech, just how you moved and things like that. And it turned out that you could predict, like in a negotiation, a salary, you should pay attention. In a salary negotiation, you could predict who was going to win and by how much, right? If you went to like a speed dating, you could tell who was actually going to go. And it's like, that's really interesting. We have this sort of physical language in our voice and the way we move that tells a whole different story than the words. And then we took some of the very, very first cell phones and we started using them too. Not because they were cell phones, but because they had Bluetooth. And Bluetooth knows when there's other things nearby, right? So you
Geolocation.
No, it's not geolocation. It's like my phone can see your phone. So that means we're within a certain distance of each other. And it turns out if you look at that contact data, you can tell who are the friends, who are work friends, who are outside work friends, who's the boss, right? Who's going to be friends in 6 months, right? Because they all have these distinct patterns. We're like these little sort of, I mean, we're animals, obviously, but we have these patterns. And those are our sort of social negotiation, meeting and negotiating things, signals that we have. And you can scale it up. So for instance, today you could take anonymized cell phone data, which is geolocation, right? But it's anonymized. But you can look, say, in each neighborhood, and you can predict very accurately whether or not that neighborhood is getting richer, whether the kids will come out okay or not. It turns it all has to do with sort of the spread of ideas and cultures and interaction. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than anything else. It's amazing. And those are the sorts of things that we used. I helped the Secretary General set up the measurement things for the Sustainable Development Goals. And as you know, you don't do things that you can't measure, so these are the ways that you measure things. not individual data, but county by county data to sort of see, are they getting richer? Are they getting poorer? Is it stress or whatever?
So, building off of that, your lab has incubated technology that now runs India's national identity system, powers part of Alibaba, and shaped the GDPR. And for those who don't know, that was Europe's
Right, yeah, I led the discussions that started the privacy regulations. Yeah.
Yeah, which is sort of put Europe on a kind of an interesting kind of place in this whole discussion of
Yeah.
privacy. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary reach for an academic lab. How do you think about the ethical weight of spinning out technologies that will be used at that scale? You know, hundreds of billions, and especially when the use cases you couldn't predict turn out to matter the most. Or no, spinning out technologies that will be used at scale, especially when the use cases you couldn't predict turn out to
Well,
matter
you
most.
can never really predict where your actions are going to go. Okay, I mean that's just not possible. You can try to do good. If you see it, you should watch afterwards and see if it is doing good. I mean, for instance, the things that we did that I'm most proud of, we started a little local company. It's a B Corp. Doesn't make any money, but it is a little AI that lives on phones that helps 1 out of every 30 births in the world. Think about that. So that's it's good in one sense, okay, because it's helping all those babies. It's bad in the sense that now the government knows where all the births are.
Surveillance. It's called surveillance.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you got to pay your money and take your choice there. And the governments wouldn't let us deploy that unless we gave them the data. That's universal. Mostly India, West Africa, things like that. But then another thing that we did is we did some of the basic protocols for safety on authentication on phones, on computers, OpenID, Kerberos before that. You know, there's a lot of scamming in the world, but there'd be a lot more without that. So that's got to count as sort of a good thing, right?
So you've written recently that fundamental problem with AI agents is their lack of what you call community. You know, social physics. I think you helped identify trends in community. These AI agents, they optimize for an individual or a company, not for the broader social fabric. What does a loyal AI actually look like in practice, and why does it matter who the agent is loyal to?
So one of the reasons I'm out at Stanford more is that's where the action is, right? And everybody is completely nuts about making these agents. Why? Because they're cheap. You can run them very quickly. They've gotten 1,000 times cheaper in the last 3 years. Pay attention to that. That means you can now run them on phones, fairly regular phones, high end, but high. 3 years from now, you will see real full-up agents everywhere. But think about what they're made out of. They're made out of all this sort of stuff that's on the web, the performative things. And of course, they're going to have biases that depend on the company that manufactured it. This thing is not acting for you, it's acting for the company. And the performative stuff that's on the web is not necessarily what you want to be getting advice or having help you do various things. So loyal is a legal term that means it acts for you. It's like a lawyer is supposed to do or a doctor is supposed to do. It's a fiduciary. So you'd like to have AI agents on your phone, wherever you use it, but that they act for you. And you don't want them to share a lot of data. That's part of it, is if you own it and it's on your phone, you don't have to share data. You might have to say, yeah, I still want to buy this. And you have to give them your credit card, but you don't have to give them where you ate this morning and 5 other things, which is the way things are constructed now. So we're at an inflection point where you can actually own some of the intelligence that Amazon and other people have on your phone competitively, right? And be able to purchase things. Now, that sounds like something worth trying. On the other hand, you know, it could go wrong in lots of ways. People could like embed bad things in it. You hear about prompt injection. Who's going to make this stuff? Well, they're all going to be self-interested. They're probably not going to be interested in you. One of the movements to make this a little better is called digital public infrastructure. So India is putting a great deal of money in building things, those basic things for digital commerce that are free. Everybody has it. The banks have to use it. People who sell things have to use it. It's not 5% like MasterCard. It's like a penny to do things, right? So anybody can use it. The digital contracts, digital. How many of you guys believe you're in control of your health records? Yeah, right. Okay. Well, but in India, you are. I mean, literally. Now, the bad side is the government can see it too. But, it really is something where there could be a sea change if we want to change things that way. But to do it, we have to show that it really satisfies those trust and legal conditions. And we have to figure out how people can monetize things because, the internet is run on advertising. That's it, right? And so the question is if you have something where advertising is not such a big deal, like these AI agents, they look at the statistics of everything, the price, the performance, and then they make a decision, but they don't look at advertising, right? That's what would be sort of silly of them. And so you have to find other ways to do it. What Andreessen Horowitz, which is sort of the leading VC in the world at this point, thinks is that what you're going to see is you're going to see the death of most common advertising. That's an incredible change, right? But you're going to see these concierge services. So like I work with Amex and other sorts of companies to be able to say, how can you make things that act for you? And yeah, you're going to pay a little extra for it, right? So it's more a subscription model than an advertising model. We'll see where it goes. But I think that having things that work for me are what I want to see, right? And you don't know where it's going to go. You just try to say, look, I think it's good that we can have actors that act for us, not for somebody that we don't know, right? And of course, there's a lot of safety and fraud and other sort of issues in there too.
So just building on that, what do you think is working with AI and what isn't? What do you think the biggest wins and biggest dangers are with AI?
Well, the biggest wins at the moment, this is really interesting. People say, well, what are we going to use AI for? The lab I'm in is Eric Brynjolfsson's in there too, and he's done like surveys of lots of companies that have deployed AI. And first of all, the people who are successful at that had a failure beforehand. Okay, they didn't do it the first time. It was like getting all the management together that was the biggest factor. But the ways that are best to use it are where, sort of the busy work gets automated, and if it's not exactly like all the other ones, it gets promoted to a human. That's by far the most productive way of using AI. It's as a sort of a gopher for you, right? And it solves a lot of the sort of legal problems of when you make a mistake, who's responsible? Because you actually had eyeballs on the ones that are going to be mistakes, right? So I think that's a recipe for good ones. Incidentally, when companies do this, most of them don't reduce headcount. Most of them have a long list of other things they've always wanted to do, and they say, okay, we only need this many people to do this, but now we can finally get to this, this, and this. So that's actually what's happening, okay? Now, companies are also really uncertain, and they don't really want to hire new people, and there's a bunch of other sort of things in there that are hopefully temporary when they sort of begin to really sort of get on a roll. And the biggest danger is that as you deploy all this infrastructure, you increase the attack surface in ways that we have never seen before. So you can imagine somebody, spinning up 30,000 little fake people to push market prices one way or corner something or convince you that, oh yes, everybody does this, right? And we already see that. So I have this sort of amusing position where I'm on this little committee. There's only 6 of us. That committee manages $10 trillion of assets, and they are worried about this. Because if you think about people with that scale of operation, right, you're moving millions of dollars, maybe billions of dollars around. People can do really sophisticated attacks. ones we have never really thought possible before, because we've always constructed these things with the idea that it's people at the other end. It's not something that can spawn infinitely and is really pretty smart. And so they're worried that that's where you're going to see the really bad things. And of course, there's also kinetic wars and things like that that you ought to worry about.
So let me ask you this. You're very involved with GDPR. What is China doing with AI right now that you're aware of that may not be so socialized with the public? And then what about the other countries that aren't the United States and U.S.? How do they plan to use AI? There are 190 something countries, and I think countries have a role to be leaders right now and figure out how to use this technology.
Yeah, so there's a huge sort of changing afoot and a lot of competitors. And the conversation in the U.S. is just misses everything. It's just like complete BS, what most people talk about. Because it's not about frontier models. So I happened to have chance to sort of talk with the head of China's state-owned infrastructure for Belt and Road. The people who deploy AI all over the world, right? What are they interested in? It's not frontier models. It's being able to deploy good enough AI models so that they can be the person that serves the accounting, the shipping, the so forth. But they also get to see the data streams. Not necessarily the content, but they know that there's a lot of investment here, and they're getting really big with, this sort of and that, as President Xi says, gives you the insight to be able to do things. Now, China's not the only one. India is putting a major push on this, right? And they're being particularly attractive because they're saying, here, take our software, it's free, okay? And it's all interoperable, and that's all good, but they're probably going to be the ones that service most of it, right? Which means, Tata Consulting, things like that, right? And so they're probably going to be the ones to see all the data flows, all the insights about what's actually happening. Abu Dhabi, same thing. They put a lot of money into owning the AI business, but not for the AI. It's for sort of becoming the Microsoft of the Indo-Pacific. Singapore, same thing. Japan, same thing. So that's the real competition, is sort of becoming the provider of infrastructure for the fastest growing parts of the world and being able to have insight into what's going on in those areas before anybody else.
So you mentioned China, U.S., India. What about the next 25 countries? How do you see them using AI?
Well, so the data show that China, U.S. obviously, India, Abu Dhabi, because they have a lot of free capital and are committed to this. Singapore has done this beautifully for the last 40 years. This type of thing was the basic idea for their sovereign wealth fund. They would own telecom and banking, not whole, but they'd own like 40% of everything. And that gave them this amazing advantage, not just in terms of capital accumulation, but in knowing how shipping and manufacturing is happening and knowing where to invest next, right? So those are the ones that I would sort of put at front. What most countries are talking about is called sovereign AI. So what they don't want is they don't want American or Chinese AI, right? Most AI today is generated by people on the East Coast or the West Coast of America, or in the East Coast of China if it's in Chinese. That's it. So you see something and maybe it speaks Turkish. Well, those are Turkish-speaking people on the East Coast of America. They're not Turks in Turkey. And so there's a lot of cultural sort of mistakes in there and prejudices. A lot of the minor languages aren't handled well at all. And what countries see is if they don't have a sort of stake in some sort of good enough AI, they're not going to be able to control their trade, their health services, their education systems. They're going to be dependent on somebody else's system, which will have other sorts of biases built in. And this is the thing that you see the Europeans in particular are just completely ripshit about this. So I have friends that are very, very senior in some of the European countries, and they've sort of woke up one day and realized they don't control their infrastructure at all. And part of this was the various sorts of sanctions that were put on, probably first during Biden's thing, but certainly with vengeance now. They don't even control their money, because money goes over systems that America controls. And if the president says you don't own that money, you don't own that money. And to the Germans, that's like, oh my God, what are we talking about here? Other countries also. So this is at Davos this year. For instance, the Prime Minister of Canada gave a big talk about this, that everybody went, yeah. And what he said basically was that mid-sized countries need to own their own infrastructure, in the sense, own of control of it, right? And they need to band together to get the scale to be able to form alternative points of power so that they don't end up in this uncomfortable situation of being controlled by somebody else.
So, closing question: what will AI-enabled future society look like from your vantage point? Are you a techno-optimist, or are you a doom and gloomer? Tell us.
Well, so there, I mentioned a lot of things that could go wrong, right? Fairly conventional things, but I also am an optimist, because what I see people creating very scalable companies with small numbers of people. So we're talking about, what is AI
Three
good
is
for?
the new 1,000.
Yeah, right? So, they're good at lots of data, and they're good at making sort of routine type things. You don't need 1,000 people. You need sort of 3 people. The reason you need 3 people is it's not fun to do it alone, right? No, seriously, we're all humans, right? And you need different perspectives to be able to understand what people really want. So I would say 6, but you're getting companies of 6 people creating large things. At the same time, companies last a lot less time than they used to, right? They used to be lifetime employment, and then there was 20-year average life, and now it's getting to be, 5 years? A lot of that has to do with acqui-hires and things like that. But you see this world where the world is just all little startups, and even big companies. Like I talked to one gentleman who employs 350,000 people. And what he wants to do is essentially break his company up into little teams that are essentially autonomous, right? Because that's the way you can be agile, that's the way you can scale. So he's not getting rid of people, he's just got to take over the world. That's his idea. So I looked around for a model of what this might be, and this has got a little bit of problems with it. But if you look at San Francisco today, right? There are 600,000 people that are working age. There are 15,000 venture-backed AI companies. So divide 600 by 50, right? It's like, and there's a couple of big companies in there too, and there's a government and so forth. And there are 90,000 small businesses. That's the number 6, right? Mm-hmm. Basically, right? And so this is a world that is percolating. Everybody has their own little thing. Maybe it's a little restaurant. It's not going to scale, but it'll be great. Maybe it's something that's a new accounting firm or a new whatever firm that'll take over the world. But it's going to be enormously entrepreneurial, enormous churn. You want to ask, where does retirement benefits come in? How about health insurance, right? Things like that are going to be major issues. I was talking to the head of England's civil service, and he said, this means basically that we're going to be able to really renovate and make our trade guilds more important. Because what you are now is you want a full stack developer? Well, there's a trade guild for that. You want somebody who really understands marketing? Well, there's a trade guild for that, because this is the political reality of England. And I don't know, it's going to go that way. But that's a way to sort of think about it.